If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Tonight's guest is Wiley Biro. Wiley, welcome to the show.
Hey Vic, how you doing today?
Oh, fair to middling. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite well. No complaints so far. Thanks for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. And that's a great thing. Wiley, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Sure, Vic, not a problem. My name is Wiley Biro, and I grew up in central New Jersey. I was born in Princeton, and I grew up in Hillsborough. Hillsborough basically lands dead smack in the center of New Jersey. If there was a central Jersey, Hillsborough would be right in the center. It's kind of an interesting town. When I was a kid, it was quite rural, mostly farmland, some suburban communities, but it was pretty much on the border of like the highly developed New Jersey that goes north into New York City. That like super developed part of New Jersey basically stops at my town. So like the northern side of my town is very developed. And then when you get towards the northwestern side, it becomes more rural, and you hit the Sauerland Mountain Preserve. And I grew up on a street that was like right at the top of the Sauerland Mountain Preserve. Really beautiful property my parents had, surrounded by farmland and forest. So I, growing up in one of the most densely populated states per capita, I was lucky enough to, be surrounded by the outdoors. It was like a little paradise in New Jersey. So I didn't have like the typical childhood growing up in New Jersey. I didn't have neighbors and kids all around. It was basically just me and my folks. And ever since I was a little baby, my mom, before I could even walk, would throw me into her backpack, one of those little baby backpacks that you could hike around with. And she would take me hiking all through the mountains and the trails just as a kid. And, I grew up just exploring in the forest. I had a lot of freedom as a kid. My mom would just let me run outside. We did have a rule, though. If my mom ever whistled or called for me, I had to come right away. So, she had me trained really well. And, I never ran into issues or anything like that. But as a kid, my town in Hillsborough was very rural. There was one traffic light in the town at Amwell and 206. And that was the only traffic light in the town. Today, most of the farmland and a lot of the open space has been developed. Now there's a traffic light practically on every single street corner. So this town has changed so much within 36 years. I actually turned 36 November 22nd of last month. And I actually just moved back to New Jersey from Oregon and Washington. I'd been living between the both states for the past year. I was wildland forest firefighting out there, which was quite incredible. To back up a little bit, so I grew up in Hillsborough. I went to the school systems here in Hillsborough. I graduated high school in 2008. High school, in New Jersey, everyone was really preppy. Everyone had like Abercrombie and Fitch, and I was sort of like one of the a little bit of an outcast. I was never really bullied in high school. I had plenty of friends, but, I was really into the outdoors. And my senior year of high school, I founded the first outdoor survival program in high school. And that was a really great experience. And the club actually still exists today. So that was really fun. Well, after high school, I didn't know what I really wanted to do with life. So, I went to a wilderness survival school, and it wasn't like any survival school. This was an expensive, prestigious survival school where after completing a year-long course, they would certify you to be an outdoor survival instructor. And the school was located in Duval, Washington. So at 18 years old, I got shipped across the country and dropped off 10 miles up the foothills of the Cascade Mountains to go to this survival school. And it was an amazing experience. And I became really comfortable in the outdoors. I learned to track animals. I learned about botany and ecology and what plants were edible and which plants are medicinal. And I learned how to, do hunting in a primitive style. And it was just like an incredible experience. I learned every tree species and plant species in the Pacific Northwest. And I just really loved that experience. I got to do intensive camping all throughout Washington State, Oregon, California. And oh man, that experience just really gave me this confidence that I never would have gained otherwise. A confidence that, if stuff hits the fan and I have to go off grid, I will be in a better position than a lot of other people. So with that said, after the program, I ended up moving back to New Jersey and I worked at Starbucks briefly. I became the assistant manager. And then I decided that I want to do more traveling, and I looked into this program called AmeriCorps, and it was a really cool program because you get to try all different types of jobs and travel all over the country helping people. So I ended up doing that for 2 years, which was another really great, amazing experience. I really got to learn so many different trades. I did carpentry. I became certified as a wildland forest firefighter through that program. I also got certified through FEMA to do disaster relief. So I was sent all over the country. Anytime there was a natural disaster, I got to go to Alabama because there were tornadoes. I got to go into Texas due to some flooding. Then I got to do wildland forest firefighting all over the South. I was in Virginia, North Carolina, New Jersey, New York, all really over the West Coast doing firefighting, which was really fun. And I still hadn't gone to college yet. But while I was firefighting, I met a bunch of wildlife biologists that were just so passionate about saving wildlife and giving back to nature. And some of these people that I was getting to work with were so inspiring to me. And like through my outdoor background, I realized like one of my passions is, just giving back to nature and doing what I can to make the forest healthier. Because like the human race, we tend to take and take and take from nature. And like, I really noticed like in this life, if I could give back, I feel like I'll live a good life. So that's sort of been one of my goals whenever I'm looking for work and just in life. I love going out into the forest, hiking, mushroom hunting, camping. And so after AmeriCorps, I ended up basically moving back to the Pacific Northwest. I was living in Washington State. I gained residency. Then I went to the Evergreen State College, and I studied wildlife biology and basically forest management. And I got my degree, and I ended up moving back to New Jersey again. And I started doing tree work because it was just a job I had landed, and it was a really interesting job because it was somewhat science-based. When I got hired, I learned to climb trees and prune trees properly, and then I also got into the plant healthcare aspect where I was going around and treating plants and trees for certain diseases. And I also did a bunch of invasive species removal. So after being an arborist for 5 years, in New Jersey, I really got burnt out on living in New Jersey. And just being like, this job really just made me feel kind of stuck. So I just manifested moving back to Oregon, to the Pacific Northwest. So this was about a year ago. I moved back to the Pacific Northwest as an arborist, but I knew that when I got back to the Pacific Northwest, I wanted to do firefighting because that's a really way it's a really good way to help, the forest and help people. And it was just like, something I've always wanted to get back into. So a year ago, I moved back. I moved into Portland. I did tree work for a couple months. Then I found a job as a wildland forest firefighter, and that's what I continued to do the rest of the year in Washington and Oregon, basically. But I was based out of Salem, Oregon. So all summer I was out in the mountains fighting fires, running chainsaws, and just doing everything I can to like basically save the forest out there. And it was an incredible experience. So right now it's the off season. I'm not doing any firefighting. I'm still on call for any disaster reliefs that happen in the country. And in fact, right now, I just want to put my best wishes out there to everyone in the Pacific Northwest, and I just hope everyone's safe. And because there's major flooding going on right now, it's super unprecedented. So my heart goes out to everyone out in the Pacific Northwest right now. I was actually in Washington State 1 week ago, so I missed that storm by a week. I actually just moved back to New Jersey a few days ago. So that's basically a little brief bio on myself, Vic.
Holy cow, Wiley. You sure have lived an exciting life.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I try to not stay stagnant. I really love adventures and I love the outdoors. And yeah, I'd like to do different things and try different jobs. Yeah, so thanks, Vic.
Oh, no, you're welcome. Yeah, they could make a movie about you, about that life you've lived.
Yeah, maybe.
They could. And speaking of work, from what I understand, you're looking for employment right now. Would you like to put a plug out for that?
Oh, sure, Vic. That would be incredible. Yeah, so I am a certified wildland forest firefighter, and I'm unemployed right now, but I'm looking for different work, something a little less physically vigorous and a little safer. But I'm in the field of forest management and wildlife biology, and yeah, if anyone knows any positions available, I'm flexible. I'm willing to move, and yeah, I have an amazing sense of the outdoors as far as reading the landscape, tracking animals, and yeah, I'm a very hard worker doing tree work and firefighting. I'm happy to work long hours, and there's no job that I'm not afraid to do. So if anyone out there has any jobs in mind, please keep me in mind. So thank you for that, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, glad to do it. And if anyone listening does have an employment opportunity for Wiley that you'd like to contact them about, then if you go to the description for tonight's show, you'll find a link to his Facebook profile. That'll make it really easy for you to reach him. If you've had a Dogman encounter that you'd like to speak with me about, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. Let's get into your encounters now. Please give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, Vic. So I'm going to rewind a couple weeks before the encounter just to give some background up to this that leads us up to the situation. So basically about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before this encounter, this situation happened, I was on a camping trip in Florida. I did a 17-day long camping trip. I was working as an arborist at the time. I had been working for about 3 years, and I had a bunch of vacation time saved up. So we were coming close to January, and my vacation hours weren't going to roll over. So if I didn't use the vacation time, I'd lose it. So I took full advantage of that, and I went on a 17-day camping trip in Florida. So I had a partner at the time, and this girl was like the love of my life. I wanted to marry her. I wanted to have a family with her, and that was our plan. So she was about 7 months pregnant at this time, and I was under the assumption that it was my boy. It was supposed to be a boy, and I was expecting a son. So going on this camping trip, she completely encouraged. She was living, her parents lived right across the street, so she was totally fine. She worked from home, and so it wasn't really a big problem for me to go on this vacation, and she was totally encouraging of it. But I don't know, 14 days into the vacation, she called me and told me that she was done, and she moved me out of the house, which caught me off guard because the day before she left me a message, telling me that the baby was kicking, and I don't know. Anyway, to make a long story short, I was living with her, and I hadn't lived at my folks' house in probably 10 years. So I was 32 at this time, and she broke up with me, moved all my stuff out of our apartment while I was on vacation into my parents' house. Didn't give me any reason why. obviously I was trying to do everything I could to fix this because I was, thinking we were going to have a kid. And so like I ended up moving back in with my parents, and it was like I was so depressed and I felt so defeated and I was heartbroken, and I didn't understand what was going on because I had done everything in this relationship. I had already set up a whole nursery for the child. I had time taken off from work. I had family members sending me baby gifts, and my main employer had given me all this stuff from their baby who was just born, or who was born a couple years earlier. And so like when this happened, it was a huge embarrassment. But after I moved back in with my parents, the girl was still having me come over and cook dinner and do all this stuff for her, and she really was just taking complete advantage of me. So one day, I was at my parents' house feeling really depressed, hoping that there was a chance that we would get back together. And she called me one night and said that, yeah, I decided I don't want the baby to have the name you chose, and your name's not going to be on the birth certificate. And I was like, what? That's extremely hurtful. And then she fessed up and said, I'm so sorry, it's not yours. And a bunch of red flags came up during that time, because like when I thought about it, like it kind of made sense, because I don't need to go into more details, but it ended up not being mine. And I was very upset. My family was upset and disappointed. So many years later now, like I realized that the whole situation was a blessing in disguise. I wouldn't have been happy in that relationship, and it would have, it never would have worked. It wasn't my kid anyway. So I'm at my parents' house, and I'm really mourning this whole situation. It was really hard for my parents to accept at the time. A few weeks after the fact, they totally were on my side and were happy that the situation happened the way it did, because they really never liked the girl at all. So my parents' property, like I said earlier in the interview, is kind of in a rural area of New Jersey. We're surrounded by farmland and forest, and this is my home. I grew up hiking out here. I know like every square inch of the forest behind my house. I've hiked all in the farmland and all the forest around the farmland, and I really feel comfortable out here. Like it's my second home. And after living in Washington State for a long time, the forests out there are so dense and expansive, and they can really give you a foreboding feeling when you're out there. So like, coming out here, I just feel like I'm kind of like top predator, king of the forest. And I was having one of those mourning moments, like a mourning situation. Like I was upset, and I wasn't thinking rationally at all. And typically when I go into the forest, I keep a clear head. Being out in the forest for me is like, gives me a sense of peace. And that's one of the reasons why I love hiking. And typically when I'm in the forest, I have like a really calm, collected mind setting. But in this situation, I was crushed. I was heartbroken. And I really went outside, like in a belligerent state. I wasn't thinking rationally. I went out without a flashlight. So my parents, on one side of the road I live on East Mountain Road, and on one side of the road is the Sourland Mountains. And basically you cross the road from my parents' house and it goes straight up a hill into the mountains, and it's all forested, and there's mountain-esque features. It's not even a real mountain. It's more of a hill, but there's a lot of mountain-esque features, like giant boulders, and there's like spring-fed creeks, and one of the creeks is called the Roaring Rocks, because like when you find the mouth of the creek kind of near where this you cross over the street from my parents' house, and you could see the creek, and you follow the creek, and the rocks in the creek get bigger and bigger and bigger the further up the hill you get, until you can't see the creek anymore, right? But you could hear the creek under the rocks, so they call it the Rumbling Rocks. So a lot of these like really special like mountain-esque features are off trail, and a lot of the people, there's hiking trails all around there. There's a park, and a lot of the people that go to the hike up at the Sourlands don't know of these like secret spots with giant boulders. And there's this one spot called Devil's Half Acre, and there's no trails that lead to it. I feel like I'm probably one of the few people that actually know where Devil's Half Acre is. So it's not that far from my parents' house. Like, you cross the street and like 5, 6, 7 minutes walking up into the forest, you maybe 10 minutes and you're at Devil's Half Acre, which is this boulder field in the middle of the forest where trees can't really grow in the middle because the boulders block the trees from growing. And there's all these little crevices and caves that you could crawl into, and there's definitely animals living there. It's a really interesting place. Every time I go there during the day, I see vultures. So there's like a vulture nest that lives there. Every time I've gone there, I've seen a vulture. It's really strange. And one of the last times I went there, I saw baby vultures, which was really kind of cool to see. They were super cute, baby vultures. Yeah, never seen baby vultures before. But there's all types of animals that den up in these like rock crevices. And some of these boulders are 20 feet up in the air. Like, when you're climbing on them, you're rock scrambling. It is really fun, and it's a really cool spot. A lot of people that grew up in New Jersey, in Hillsborough, New Jersey, have no idea that this even exists in the town. So it's one of my little happy, quiet, secret spots that I don't really tell many people about. So anyway, to get back to the story, I'm really upset, and it's nighttime, and I decide to go to Devil's Half Acre, the Roaring Rocks, across the street. In the wilderness school I went to when I was 18, we would do a lot of night hiking, and we wouldn't use flashlights because if you use flashlights, it ruins your night vision. So I often will go on night hikes without flashlights to try to train my night vision to be the best it can be. So this time I didn't grab a flashlight. I didn't have any weapons, no self-defense. It was just the clothes on my back and me. So I'm going out into the forest at night, and I cross the street, and I'm making my way over Devil's Half Acre, and I'm heartbroken. I'm so upset, and I basically have a why me moment, and I just laid on one of the rocks, yelling up at the universe, why me? And it was just like kind of one of those moments I'm sure all of us have had in our lives. And I was just thinking, like, I also, like, I don't know, I just got this feeling like, oh, am I disrupting the forest? Like, and then I got this egotistical feeling like, no, I'm not disrupting the forest. In fact, this is my forest. I grew up here. And I was just being loud, and all of a sudden, I heard a growl, a low growl, and it sounded like it was canine. But when it happened, my heart dropped into my stomach, became a little tiny pit, and instantly, I knew that it was something unusual. I knew immediately, just my intuition, like something in the back of my head, as if I was looking at the creature, which I wasn't. I couldn't see anything, which was even scarier because, like, I'm hanging out in this forest by myself, no flashlight, and I'm being loud and obnoxious, and something started growling at me, and it was a low, foreboding growl. And when you're in the forest alone, with no flashlight, and something growls at you, it's extremely unsettling. So I instantly regretted having that egotistical vibe, like I'm king of the forest, and I instantly was humbled, and I was like, oh, okay. I was wrong, and so I immediately felt terror in that moment, like, I need to leave right now. And that's exactly what I did. So I was like, okay, it's time to get out of here. And let me remind you, I don't have a flashlight. And I was studying in college wildlife biology, and I have seen black bears in person. I've seen mountain lions in the wild, and I've seen coyotes and wolves. And I've actually seen a black bear at night without a flashlight when I was living in Duvall, Washington. In the wilderness school, I used to have to walk back and forth from people's houses that I knew that were in the wilderness school program. And often late at night, I would end up walking back to my yurt with no flashlight. One time I was coming up to the driveway that I lived down, and I heard a black bear, and I had to walk past it to get to where I was going, and I had no flashlight. And I had nothing to do. I just had to walk past it. And that was one of the scariest moments at that time of my life. But I was immediately able to recognize what the animal was. I could hear it was a bear. I knew that even without a flashlight, I knew it was going through the dumpsters. There were garbage cans at the top of the driveway, and the bear was just scavenging through the trash cans. So it freaked me out and it scared me a lot. But I just walked past it confidently and went down the driveway to my yurt. And it's funny because the next morning when it was light out, we were driving up the hill to the end of the driveway. And the little black bear was scavenging out of the trash cans again. And the bear was actually small. It was a young black bear. And when we drove past it, it ran into the forest. But with that said, I didn't have a flashlight, and I knew exactly what that animal was. So let me get back to the story. So I'm in the forest, and I hear this growl, and I don't have a flashlight, but I could tell you right away it was canine. I could just hear it. It sounded like a large canine, but it was such a deep, deep growl, and it didn't sound like a domesticated dog at all. And it didn't sound like a coyote, and it didn't sound like a wolf, but it sounded like some sort of canine. But I wasn't even really trying to analyze exactly what it was at this point. I just realized I had to get out of there. So I'm trying to quickly move through this forest, not trip over boulders. There's multi-floor rose sticker bushes, and I'm walking through them, getting kind of torn up. And I finally make it to my street, the street to cross over into the fields. And I felt a little bit better. I was like, okay, I made it to the street. No big deal. So I cross the street and I get into the field. So near where my parents live, there's a few fields. There's one neighbor next to my parents' house. So if you're facing the street from the front of my parents' house, to the right is my neighbor's house, and a field at the back of their house. In between my parents' house and my neighbor's house is a green strip between the fields. So on the other side of my neighbor's house is another field. So basically, where I was coming out of the forest, I was crossing the street and going into the field on the other side of my neighbor's house. And I get into the field and I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably okay. But I make it through the field and I get into the green belt, and I'm not into the next field by my neighbor's house yet. I'm sort of halfway into this green belt, about to cross into the field. And that's when I can hear the whatever was in the forest coming through the forest, following me. And that's when I realized this was something unusual, because I've ran into predators and they don't stalk you through the forest like this. First of all, it was keeping a safe distance from me, but it was following me from behind. So anyway, I'm crossing the green belt and I hear this thing coming, and that freaked me out more than the growl, honestly. So I start kind of making my way through the green belt, and I'm running through the field at this point really, really fast, because basically once you get through this field, one more green belt, and then I'm in my parents' yard. And my parents have a barn, and my dad built a photography studio on the barn. And at the time I was living in their the addition where the photography studio was, which faces the back of my property, and it faces all the farmland. So, I am feeling a sense of fear that I haven't felt honestly ever. This feeling I felt was scarier than when I saw the black bear at night. So basically, I'm really freaked out at this point. I don't know what's behind me. I feel like it's some sort of canine, but it didn't seem like a normal canine. I don't know, but I wasn't really thinking. I was just trying to get back to safety at this point. So I'm crossing through the green belt. I'm running through the field. I'm going through the one more green belt to get into my parents' yard. And I get into my parents' yard, and I get into the room where I'm staying, and I keep the door open. And this was my safety. I felt safe. I was like, okay, I'm cool. I'm in my room that's facing the back of the property. and I basically just wait there, and I could hear the animal going through my neighbor's field. I could hear it panting. Basically, the whole time it was behind me. What really freaked me out too was it wasn't trying to be stealthy, and you could hear it panting and breathing as it's coming through the fields behind me. So that's kind of why I kept the door open. I wanted to see what this was. I mean, studying wildlife biology and stuff like that. I am intrigued to see any animal, any wildlife. But yeah, so I'm freaked out, but I feel a little bit safer. And I'm keeping my door open. I'm dead silent and I'm listening, and I could hear whatever it is coming through the green belt and crossing into my parents' yard. And that's when I could see it. And it was huge. It was literally, it looked like it could have been a black bear, but it had the slender, longer body of a canine. And I knew instantly it was a canine. And it's crossing right in front of me. And the interesting thing was, until this point, it never came closer than 100 feet to me as it was stalking, which was really strange. It kept a safe distance, but it let me know it was following me, which was not normal animal behavior. And I picked that up right away. And so basically, it's crossing through my yard, and I could see just the shadow of it. And you could hear, at this point, it's 50 feet in front of me. Like there's an oak that's probably like 60 feet away, and it's crossing in front of the oak right in front of me. And I didn't have time to get a flashlight or anything, but this thing's panting and breathing loudly as it's walking through my yard, and I could see it, but I can't see any like details. But I see this thing go right through my yard. My door is open, and I'm dead silent, dead still, and it walks right past me into the field next to my house. At this point, it's about 75 feet away from me, and it's just chilling, facing me, not moving in the field. I could see a shadow of it, and you could tell it was a canine. It was literally sitting up on its behind. I couldn't see it perfectly, but there's like a tiny, tiny little green belt with some shrubbery, and then the field. And you could see into this field a lot better than you could see into my neighbor's field. And I could see it perched up there, not far away, just sitting, not moving, and it starts making these crazy noises. It's like growling. It's kind of growling there and like panting and like doing this little bark. It was like, and I whistled to it because I'm, in my door in safety, and I whistled to this creature, and it stopped, and it completely reacted to my whistle. So when I whistled at it, it started growling way more intense, and it was the weirdest sound I've ever heard out of a canine. It was clearly a dog, not a domesticated dog, way bigger than anything I've ever seen in New Jersey, wildlife wise. And the thing, I'm looking at it, in the field, all I could see is this black, dark figure perched up, sitting on its behind, looking at me. And I whistled to it, and when I whistle to it, it stops, and then goes. I don't know, I can't do it, but it did this like growl that led into a bark, that led into a howl, and it was the scariest howl I've ever heard in my life. And literally at that moment in time, I knew it wasn't a wolf, and I knew it wasn't a coyote, and just this shrill of fear. I can't describe how terrifying it is when you have a moment like this with a creature that's that aware of you. Like this thing was watching me, was 100% aware of me, and completely escorted me out of the forest, as far as I'm concerned. And it's hard to describe the feelings that you're feeling during these kinds of moments. Like years later, I could nonchalantly talk about it, but this shook me up so bad that for the next few weeks, every time I got inside, I would lock the door because I would have. I'll get into the terrors that night terrors that I had after this, but it's just the feeling that you get when you hear something like that close. It's undescribable. Like I've had close calls firefighting. I've had close calls with mountain lions. Nothing was as scary as this. It's like you have a sixth sense built into you. It's like a primitive fear that you get when you experience a creature like this. Like, I could feel its energy, and I could tell that it was something more intelligent than a wild animal. At this point, and basically that's the encounter. After it growled and howled at me, it walked off into the fields. There were a couple other nights that I heard the exact same call, but I haven't heard it ever since. And eventually I moved back to the Pacific Northwest. Right now, I'm actually in the same room that I was in when I experienced this. But the situation really gave me some PTSD for a couple weeks afterwards. So I knew at that point it wasn't a coyote. Like, my intuition is pretty good, and I knew that was not a wolf. There are no wolves in New Jersey. I knew it wasn't a black bear, and in my past, I have heard of the Dogman before because I'm really into the Bigfoot subject. But I hadn't really ever really heard of it. Like, I've heard of the Dogman, but I didn't really think much of it. Never thought there could be one in New Jersey, and I never looked into this subject at all. So that night, when I went to bed, I had nightmares that there was a bipedal wolf-like canine. In my dream, the face is so descriptive. I could describe it, but so basically, like, imagine a wolf. Like, so the face that I was seeing that was bipedal in my dream was basically like a werewolf face with a scar down right on the left side of its eye, and it had hands. And it was weird because that night I had a dream that there was a bipedal canine watching me through my window. So in this photography studio, none of the windows have shades or blinds, and you could basically just look in and see me sleeping, and that really made me uncomfortable. And I woke up that night sweating, thinking there was a bipedal canine looking at me through the window, and I got up and I looked, and there was nothing there. And every single night for about 2 weeks afterwards, I would have these insanely vivid dreams of something looking at me through the window, something huge, 10 feet tall, looking at me through the window with fingers. And it got bad enough to the point where I was scared to go outside. So this unit that I'm living in isn't attached to my parents' house, and I would have to go outside at night to go to the bathroom and stuff. And it got to the point where every single time I would be outside at night, I was terrified. Like, I was like, all right, let me run in and run back, or let me run inside and run back out as fast as I can. Every time I came in the studio, I would lock the door, and I just have these. The night terrors weren't just the creature looking in through my windows at me. It was also it coming in, and I would have these dreams of the Dogman opening my door with its fingers and coming in, and for some reason I just would have these horrible nightmares. So that was very interesting. I've never experienced nightmare terrors before. I've never really had bad dreams, and they were just so vivid that it ended up making me look into the Dogman subject. So I didn't really know exactly what I had seen, but in my head, like, there was nothing it could have been other than a Dogman. And I didn't even really believe in the Dogman topic that much, but I'm open-minded to the fact that there are other things that exist, and I'm not closed-minded to anything. And like, after that experience, I know it was a large canine. So I started looking into the Dogman subject, and that's where I found your podcast. And I started listening to it. In some of your earlier episodes, I'm living in Somerset County, and right next to me is Mercer County and Hunterdon County. And I'm listening to your show, and I was like, wow, that sounds a lot like what I experienced, some of the encounters I was hearing. And then I heard more encounters from Somerset County, from the next street over from the street that I live on. You had a guest on that had a really intense encounter, multiple encounters. And then a couple weeks, maybe a couple months later, I heard another encounter on your show in the same town, basically on the other side of town. And that person had seen a dogman. And there was one more individual that was doing research, and they said Somerset County is a hot spot. And that is dead smack in the middle of where I am living. And I actually had no idea that this was a hot spot. But according to some sightings and experiences people have, this is a hot spot, and it makes sense. If you understand coyote or canine behavior, this has everything that they would need to survive. We have an overabundance of deer. A predator could live off of roadkill on my street, basically. Like they wouldn't even really need to hunt. There's such an imbalance with nature out here. We apparently have no mountain lions and no natural predators, but that is definitely not true. So one of the areas that an individual on your podcast was describing, I know this area pretty well, and I'm pretty sure I was able to locate the area that he described. He didn't say the name, but he just described where it was around me, and I used to mountain bike there because the area. I'm not going to say the name because he didn't want to disclose the area that it was in, but he said it was in New Jersey and it was in close to this area, so I have a feeling I knew where he was talking about. And I was mountain biking in this area where one of the individuals said he had a dogman encounter. And in this park, it's all flat farmland, but there are deer everywhere. And in this park, like, there are bones everywhere scattered. Like, I remember just looking and finding full-grown deer skeletons, deer bones ripped apart, and literally throughout this whole entire 6-mile park, there are just skeletons and deer bones everywhere. And it's like, for someone who's a tracker and studied wildlife biology, it shows there's presence of a predator. Like, there are apex predators that are living there. Coyotes can take down deer, but they typically will hunt young deer. But these were full-grown deer bones that I'm finding scattered around this whole park. I even found cow bones, and there aren't really any cattle in that area, so that's just kind of really strange and throws up some red flags for me. It's funny because New Jersey is the most densely populated state per capita, and you just don't think that there'd be anything lurking around out here. So it's really easy to let your guard down, but that is not the case. And I've learned from listening to your show, dogmen, they're everywhere. They're they can live in any habitat that you would see a fox. So, knowing that now, I'm always keeping my guard up when I'm outside. I'm more aware if I'm night hiking, and these things are around and they're closer than you would think. But yeah, that's my experience with the Dogman here in New Jersey. And that's pretty much it for that experience. So it was really terrifying. But now that I'm back in New Jersey living at my parents' house, I am interested. I'm and it's interesting too. I'm interested. I want to have another encounter. I really do want to get a better sighting on this creature. Though it was such a terrifying encounter, since I've been back, I haven't had any of those feelings of an urgency to lock the door. I haven't had any feelings that anything watching me through the window, and I haven't heard any noises other than coyotes. I've heard some coyotes, but but I'm back here in this area that is apparently a hot spot, and I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes out for tracks and any kind of evidence I can find. But with that said, I'm not trying to prove the existence of any of these elusive creatures. I respect them. I respect their space. And if they want to live a life of secrecy, I want them to be able to do that. So it's not my mission to prove that any of these creatures are real or exist. But I know that they're out there. And Yeah, that's basically it for my Dogman encounter.
Wow, Riley, that was a rough one. I'm glad that you're over it now to the point where you're interested in actually having another encounter. That tells me everything I need to know. That's definitely a sign of coming to terms with that encounter you had, but I just hate the fact you had to go through that first experience. How traumatic.
Yeah. I'm not mad at the fact that I had to go through the experience. At the time, it was terrifying. But it was just a lot to process in that moment. Like when you're out in the forest by yourself with no form of protection, no flashlight, and you hear something growl at you, it leaves you a feeling that is hard to describe. But I could tell you, it's a feeling of terror. It's not a fun feeling, and when you're in the wild, animals will go out of their way to avoid humans. So if you're camping and you're making a lot of noise and something coming into your camp, that's unusual animal behavior. If you're getting stalked from an animal from quite a far distance, that's unusual animal behavior. I mean, mountain lions will stalk you, but they are so stealth that typically you won't even see them until it's too late. So if an animal is stalking you and you're aware of it and you know that it's doing that, that's not normal animal behavior. So yeah, it took me a while to be able to process it, but your show really helped. Let me tell you what, hearing so many different encounters and stuff like that, mine was really not that bad compared to some other people's experiences. But now after the fact, I'm not so, I'm more careful. I'm more aware when I'm walking around at night, for sure. For example, literally last month for my birthday, I was camping in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest in Washington State, which was an awesome experience. And that is that's some expansive habitat. So I was camping out there and I was doing a bunch of mushroom hunting, and I didn't have any negative feelings from the forest out there. I didn't feel like I was being watched at all. But when it got dark, I was definitely staying close to my campsite, definitely not walking through the forest alone. I mean, it's always good to have a partner when you're walking through the forest. People run into problems all the time. Even here in New Jersey, in the Saraland Park, across the street from where I live, people get lost all the time. A couple times a year, their search and rescue has to go up there and locate people. No one's ever gone missing out there, but people get lost often. But I mean, in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, people go missing. I think there's over 50 people that have been missing out of that national forest. And even here in New Jersey, we have the Pine Barrens. The Pine Barrens is 1,000,000 acres. I think it's the biggest preserve, or the biggest green natural space on the eastern seaboard, which is kind of a lot of people don't know that New Jersey has that kind of forest. But yeah, it's definitely there's things out there, and it's when you're in the forest, it's really good to be aware. When I go out into the forest now, I try to set my intentions. I try to have I try to stay calm and collected. I try to feel peaceful. I try to feel loving I put loving energy out into the forest. I set my intentions before I go in. I introduce myself. I give a little prayer. I feel like that always helps. And if it doesn't help the beings in the forest, at least it helps me to calm myself down, be more collected. I feel like when you're in the forest, if you can keep your wits to you, even if you have a scary experience like that, you're gonna be more likely to make rational decisions in a dangerous situation. For example, if I see a bear and it's with its cubs and I freak out in fear, I'm not going to be able to think rationally, and I might run and put myself into a dangerous situation. But if I stay calm and collected, first of all, animals pick up on your energy. So your energy, if it's calm and collected, it's not going to animals will sense that, and you're going to be able to think more rationally. So staying calm and collected is super important. And I feel like in that situation where I was out in the forest with a broken heart, I was putting off a lot of really intense energy, and I'm sure whatever was out there was picking up on that. So yeah, but I'm glad the experience happened, because I was able to find your podcast, and it's just it's now that I've listened to every episode, and I've really looked into this subject and done some research. I've learned so much. Not that I know what this creature is or what its intentions are or what its abilities are. I do know it's out there, and I've learned a lot. Now that I've dove into this subject matter, and it's really fascinating and really fun to research. But yeah, it's a really unsettling thinking that there is an apex predator out there that is so strong, because for so long I was under the assumption that humans were the top predator and the top apex predator out there. But having these experiences, now I know when I go out into the forest, I'm not top predator. So that's really humbled me. But yeah, that was on my experience, Vic. Also, wait, one more thing. Also, after the fact, I did tell my parents about this experience, and they thought I was, they laughed at me. But they did see some interesting things after the fact. So a week or two later, my parents, I told them about the experience, and I said I thought it was like a dog man, a werewolf, and my parents completely laughed at me. But with that said, a couple weeks later, they were, I think they were going out to like do something in the yard. They were in the yard, and they saw these two animals way in the back of the yard, and they thought they were deer, but like something was off. They didn't look like deer, and they like were looking more closely and realized that they were actually two canines. And they realized that it wasn't deer at first, because they were all off from being deer, but they're like as high as deer are off the ground on all fours. But they said their fur was way too dark to be a deer. And as soon as like my parents saw them, the two canines made eye contact with them. And as soon as they like looked and registered each other, the canines ran away. And my parents said they moved faster than any canine that they've ever seen. And like, this is New Jersey. What kind of large canine? It looks like it could be a deer from across the field. What kind of canine is that big? And my parents, they called me and they're like, Wiley, we just saw two Dogmen. And I was like, really? And they described what they saw. And I was like, yeah, I think you actually did see two Dogmen. And then they're like, no, it couldn't have been. I don't know what it was. They were just really big dogs. I don't know. And they were just like in denial about it. And another week later, my dad was that last experience, they were in the back of the yard. The next time, my dad was walking, and he saw the same two canine creatures walking on the perimeter of the field, and he said there were two giant canine. At first, he thought they were deer, and then when he like looked closer, he realized that they weren't. They were giant, big canines, and he said they acted the same way. As soon as he saw them, they registered that he was looking at them. They bolted, and he said it looked like a flash of lightning when they ran away. Both my parents described them running through the forest faster than anything they've ever seen move through the forest. And after that, we started finding weird tracks right in front of the studio that I'm living in. Right outside the door, I was working as an arborist. It was winter and there was snow on the ground. And right outside the door, that I was having nightmares and locking because I was afraid something was going to open it at night. My mom found a huge canine track, and this track was probably the size of my hand or bigger. And my mom found it and said it shocked her because she's never seen that track before or any footprint that's looked like that ever in her life. And she knows I'm into tracking, and she took a picture of it and sent it to me and said, Wiley, what on earth is this? It's huge. And I was able to come back and see it, and it was huge, and it was right in front of my door. And then there was another time where I was hiking and I found more canine tracks that were bigger, as big or bigger than my hands. And the biggest canine tracks that you'll typically see in the wild are either wolf or, some large domesticated dog species. And that's one thing that I've learned through tracking is how to identify the difference between a domesticated dog, a wolf, a coyote, a fox. I could even tell the difference between all these animals' scats. And this giant canine track was definitely canine, but I could not tell you what kind of canine it was. But whatever it was, it is huge, and it's wandering around New Jersey.
Huh. Wonder what that could be.
Me too. I'm thinking it's probably Dogman.
Yeah, I'd say so, unfortunately. After your parents had their own encounters, did they become addicted to the topic of dogmen, or did it just roll off like water off of a duck's back?
It rolled off water like a duck's back. They are I'm not saying that boomers are closed-minded, but they my dad's a Jersey boy. He's like a city guy. My mom's a California girl. She grew up in the Bay Area, and they just aren't like, my mom's kind of outdoorsy, but not like me. And my he's a city boy. He's a gardener. My dad likes to garden, but he does not go hiking or camping or backpacking. He likes to think he likes to fish, but he doesn't even go fishing ever. I grew up like not really doing anything other than hiking with my mom as a kid. My dad sort of was always busy working or gardening. But yeah, no, they saw what they saw, and they described as it being something that they've never seen before, and it being really large. And I told them what I believed, and they don't want to believe that there's animals out there that haven't been recognized by science. So they kind of laugh at my suggestion of what it probably was. And no, they're not into the Dogman topic, but they're happy that I'm passionate about this subject. So they're not, they just laugh at me about it and make fun of me. That's why it's hard for me to talk about these kinds of things, But with my background in wildlife biology, I have a really good sense of what kind of creatures exist. And my intuition tells me that this was nothing that should be out here and nothing that's recorded by science. It was really intimidating, and it clearly was doing its best to scare me. But yeah, so my parents don't really believe in Bigfoot or cryptids or anything out of the usual. They're not into aliens or anything. So they're black and white type people. They're awesome though. My parents are really, really cool, and totally encouraged me to do whatever I've wanted throughout my whole life. They like to poke a little fun at me, but it's all lighthearted. So yeah. But it's interesting because it's like they know something's out there because they saw something and they're like, all right, Wiley just talked about seeing the Dogman. Then we see these weird canines. Like, it's so coincidental. It's just too weird. And then my mom's noticing these big canine tracks. It's like almost they want to believe, but they can't. What can you do? And there's a lot of people like that. I was like that. I really had a hard time accepting that there could be a Dogman out there until I had this experience. So, a lot of people got to see it to believe it, and that's okay. Everyone has their own truth.
What's pretty rich is they saw Dogmen, but they still don't believe. The world is a lot more comfortable of a place, though, when you don't believe that things like this are out there. But when you actually see them the way they did, that's kind of hard to figure out. It's just a shame it's got to be that way.
Yeah, I know. I just did a road trip across the country, and I met my dad in Minnesota, and we were driving through some really rural areas. And Michigan actually has a really large Bigfoot. I don't know. Bigfoot seems to be it must be out there because there are tons of Bigfoot signs and statues and things like that. But I was driving with my dad, and I was just hoping something would cross in front of the road so he could believe me and know that there are cryptids out there. But of course, when you want to see something, you're less likely to see it, in my opinion. But yeah, they've seen them, and they're in denial. I feel like you really have to see one do something unusual. Like maybe if they saw them stand up on 2 feet, they would be more likely to believe me. But they saw them on all fours. But, there's just no canines that are that tall on all fours that I'm aware of.
No, there aren't. And like I said, it's just more convenient to not believe that they saw what they actually did see. I understand why they're taking that stance on this, but for someone like you who had such a traumatic experience, it's got to be so frustrating.
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. It really is, especially with the this subject in particular, because I don't know. I've never met anyone else that's really had an encounter in person, so it's I feel a little isolated in this with this experience and any other experience I've had for that matter. But yeah, it's really a tough subject to talk about, so I pretty much just keep it to myself. But with that said, I really enjoy being able to have this topic to research and enjoy. For example, I really enjoy your podcast. Having an experience like this makes it really interesting to hear other people's experiences and stuff. You could really learn a lot from just listening to people's details about these animals' behavior. So whenever I'm listening to your episodes, I just try to pick up as much as I can.
Well, I'm glad you know about the show, and I'm glad you like it so much. And you said just a moment ago that you feel kind of isolated. If you'd like, I could always put you into contact with other Dogman eyewitnesses. Just say the word, and I'll make that happen.
Oh, that would be excellent. That would be really excellent. I would really be interested in getting in contact with some of the individuals that were in the same county that were on your show. So if any of those, if anyone from New Jersey has had any experiences with the Dogman and would like to talk about it, please reach out to me. I would love to pick your brain. Feel free to reach out to me. Vic, if you wouldn't mind posting my Facebook link under the episode of today, that would be awesome.
Count on it. I'll definitely do that. Glad to do it. Well, Wiley, I've got a lot of questions for you, but we're already an hour in. So with that in mind, would you be willing to come back for a part 2 to do a Q&A?
Oh, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to. That sounds great.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, if that's the case, then that's what we'll do. But having said that, I can't thank you enough for coming on to share that experience with us and to tell us all about these other things that you've done. But yeah, like I said, I'll get back with you to schedule that Q&A, and we'll just air that sometime next week then.
Awesome, Vic. Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be in touch. Thanks.
Oh, no, you're welcome. And I'm looking forward to it too. Thanks again so much for your time, and have a great night.